Hello, welcome back to the Evergreen RX. I'm your host, Hayden, licensed mental health therapist, Cancer Moon, and the first to get deep at any party. And this is a little quick mini dose on how to maintain motivation. This came out of a listener question that was a follow-up kind of after my episode on if you have too many goals. I think it's like Minidose 6. So really, once we get clarified on what our goals are and the things we want to achieve in our life, the next natural question is, okay, how do I get the motivation? How do I maintain the motivation to actually make these things happen, to bring them from the dream realm into physical reality and bring them into my life? So I'm going to talk about kind of the two parts to motivation, because in preparing for this episode, I was like, you know what? I'm going to Google the definition of motivation. It's like the start to every great essay. Google the definition and then put that in your thesis statement. I don't know. I felt very like school. I'm going to the source. I'm going to the etymology of the word. But actually it ended up being super fruitful because motivation has kind of two different definitions for it. So one is the reason one has for acting or behaving a certain way. And then the other is the general desire or willingness to take action. So what I was hearing in that, and by looking at the synonyms of these definitions, one synonym was incentive and the other one was drive. Those are kind of two different things to me. At least they bring different kind of questions or things to utilize to increase your motivation. Incentive is the idea of like, why are you doing what you're doing? Why does it matter to you? And then drive is what I think we would all typically think motivation is. Like when we're talking about the word motivation, I think typically it's more of thinking about your drive to do things. And I think we can get caught up on that because drive seems like it's something that's just like gifted to us. Like you have a lot of drive or you don't. People can be described as driven people. It seems more like a set thing. So what happens when you feel like you haven't been gifted that certain drive for a goal that you want to work on? Or maybe you had it and then you lost it. And so, what do you do next? So I'm going to kind of take it from those two directions and give some tips. We'll talk about blocks to motivation too, things kind of outside of this incentive and drive that can also kind of explain why we might be having a hard time with motivating ourselves. We'll get in and out on that, and hopefully you'll leave this episode feeling more motivated and ready to tackle whatever it is that you're wanting to make a reality. So first off is incentive. Like I said, this is kind of the why are you doing what you're doing question. So where's your motivation coming from? Off the bat, you want to really start looking at, is it intrinsic or extrinsic motivation? Intrinsic, meaning that it comes from a value, something inside of yourself, and extrinsic being it's based more off of outward achievement or success or what other people want for you. So we do know that intrinsic motivation usually is going to be more long-lasting or more pleasant to kind of pursue. So if we're doing something, if someone's becoming a doctor and one person is doing it because they want to help people, they feel a genuine passion towards medicine, versus someone that is doing it because they want to make money and they want to have DR in front of their name, both people might end up succeeding in becoming a doctor. But my guess is the one that has more of an extrinsic motivation could potentially be more burned out or lose steam over time and have trouble continually motivating themselves throughout the entire process. So when you're thinking about intrinsic motivation, you can kind of ask yourself, is this goal or habit value aligned? I also have an episode on values. I think it's episode 8, to help you determine what your values are, which is super important when you're thinking about intrinsic motivation, because intrinsic it's almost like another word for value-based motivation. Does this align with your purpose? Your purpose being, creating connection or experiencing adventure and novelty or challenging yourself. Those are all values. So as an example of this, me starting a podcast, I could look from the extrinsic lens and say, well, I want to make money, I want to have a following and be able to speak at cool events and, be on a TED Talk. Okay, none of those things are bad, and maybe I do want those, but it's probably not going to keep me motivated in the day-to-day as much as the intrinsic value, which is I want to create a space of connection and community. Those are very deeply aligned for me. That's, who I want to be. I want to share my knowledge and experience with other people to help them. That keeps me going when I am posting episodes for, barely anyone to listen, especially at the beginning. Keeping me going with that, doing the work, putting in all the time and effort is really the purpose-driven side of things, not the one day maybe I'll be cool and, make a ton of money from being a podcaster. So another example of this would be like going to the gym. We can think of extrinsic motivation, like, wanting to look good so people are into you, or you can post really cool photos online, or, you fit into the size jeans that you want. But then if we look from an intrinsic lens, going to the gym could be valuing something like health, feeling better in your body, feeling empowered by building strength. Whatever it is that really resonates for you on why you would want to work out and take care of your body in that way. So really, when we define or understand what our incentive is for doing what we're doing, that why can become the thing that is our anchor point that we use to increase our willingness to take action, the drive. So yeah, now moving on to the drive portion of motivation, you really want to clarify, is your goal positive? Because it's going to be really hard to increase your energy for doing something if all you know is the things that you don't want to do. So when I say positive, I mean putting it in like the affirmative. What action can you take? Not what action are you trying not to take? Because that doesn't really leave us with anything to do, to take action upon. So yeah, motivation implies action. If your goal is centered around an action you no longer want to do, but you're not sure what action you do want to do instead, you will just hit roadblocks. So really the action is the chosen method that we take to achieve our desired why, that incentive that we decided prior. Going back to those examples of, me starting a podcast, I wanted to build a community. The method I chose was podcasting. I decided that I was going to take it step by step. I started posting every other week. Then I decided to increase to every week as I built up the drive to continue working at this, as I started to see the returns on what I was doing. I didn't dive head first and say, I'm going to post every single week and I'm just going to jump right in. I did a lot of prep work. I started with something that felt more manageable. And then I started to see some of the rewards. I got the good feelings from it. Seeing someone like a podcast of mine or ask a follow-up question or respond in the way that I was desiring by creating this platform, that built up more and more incentive and drive for me to want to keep doing it. Say like, okay, this is feeling good to me. I chose this method. I didn't know whether or not podcasting was really going to work for me, but it is. I'm enjoying it. I'm learning a lot just for myself, which is very motivating. And so now I can continue to build off of it and grow it. And it's almost like this, you start to create this positive feedback loop for yourself that keeps fueling your drive to take action. So with the gym example, maybe at first you realize like, okay, I don't want to just sit on the couch after work every day. So you know what you don't want to do. So what do you want to do? Okay, well, I want to practice yoga 3 times a week, or I'd rather put on my shoes and go for a walk after work. So you're starting with something manageable and realistic. That's huge. That is so key, guys, to maintaining motivation. Start with something realistic. We have to be real with ourselves. Look yourself in the mirror and say, what are you actually going to do? What do you actually feel capable of? Because if we set the bar too high, we can get really defeated really quickly. And that's just going to be a killer to motivation. So really starting with something manageable for yourself sets you up for more success. And, you know, habits and actions are built over time, taking steps to larger goals. It's one step at a time. We start small and we build up as we build our tolerance and our capacity for what we can do. You know, when I started as a therapist, you know, the session with clients is an intense hour of listening and tracking and engaging and being super mindful. It takes time to build up tolerance to being able to give that much energy and that much attention. For me, I didn't want to just jump in with 20 sessions a week because I would probably more quickly burn out. I wasn't at that level to feel comfortable and it feel manageable for me to give that much of myself that many hours a week. But now as I've built up and I have more and more sessions a week, it feels easier. A number that used to feel more challenging for me is actually super manageable for me now. So I know I keep hammering this home this point of being realistic with ourselves, but I think it's just super important because if we really break down and we look at our goals and we look at everything that we have on our plate and we're thinking, you know, why can't I maintain motivation to do this, and this other goal that I created for myself all at once? Well, maybe it's a little bit overwhelming, guys. And I'm a culprit of this. This is why I'm saying it, because, you know, we can bite off more than we can chew. So some blocks. If you're, you know, you have your incentive, you have your why, you've got the drive to do it, you know what actions you want to take, they are manageable, they are realistic, and you're still bumping up against blocks with maintaining your motivation. Let's look at what else might be going on here. You know, there can be emotional blocks, a fear of failure, a fear of putting ourselves out there. Maybe there's a certain financial requirement to what you're trying to do. Can you think of alternatives to that? Maybe a gym membership is too expensive. Well, can you watch videos at home? Is there a subscription to certain workout classes that you can do from your house that's more affordable than a gym? There's also physical barriers. There are informational barriers. Like, is there a certain education and information that you need before you know where to start? Research and prep work into what you're doing. And then also mental blocks. I did an episode on this. It was my Minidose 8 on, you know, why you don't feel deserving of good things, or this concept that I talk about in this episode called the upper limit problem, which is basically like, how much good do we think we can have in our lives? If we pursue this goal, or start to instill this habit in ourselves that makes us feel better and gets us closer to where we want to be, do we have mental and emotional blocks to our capacity to live in that positive space? Do we self-sabotage once we start getting the things that we want? Self-sabotaging can look like, you know, not being able to get the motivation up to do something, when really that might not be the problem that's going on. There's something else. There's a belief. There's some conditioning there that is actually standing in our way. And once we clear that away, we might find that motivation, you know, arises really naturally or comes on a lot more strongly. So some things to kind of leave you with, in addition to just maybe think about once you're, you know, finished with this episode, is everyone has different sources of empowerment. Some people are really empowered by knowledge. Maybe you know the science behind why meditation is really good for you. And that's empowering enough for you to want to start a daily meditation practice. Or maybe experientially helps you gain motivation. You meditate every day and you notice the positive benefits in your life. So you find yourself wanting to do it more and more, and it becomes more naturally and inherently motivating because of those positive effects. Or maybe it's through the emotional impact that you have on yourself or others through what you're doing. This all kind of goes back to those incentives and that intrinsic drive for why you are doing what you're doing. And so really learning what way you feel empowered. Do you need to just get out there and start doing it and see how it makes you feel? Or do you want to know why what you're doing is important? Do some research on it. So leaning into those natural sources of empowerment and motivation for you and really utilizing those to your benefit. And if you walk away from this episode with nothing but this, I want you to know that motivation waxes and wanes, and that's normal and that's a part of life. It's okay. Sometimes we're in a phase that is more stagnant, or just we're in a maintenance phase. We don't need to be growing and expanding right now. We're taking rest. Sometimes our motivation is going to naturally feel more robust and full, and it just flows to us effortlessly, and other times it's harder to find. Even when you have all the skills and all the knowledge and the intrinsic motivation and the drive and whatever, sometimes our ability to do things looks different. The way we do it looks different. The amount of energy that we have, the amount of time we have to dedicate, that is a part of life. So it's okay. Go easy on yourself. Motivation is not meant to be a place that we arrive at and we take up residence at, and it never changes. So be easy on yourself. I hope everything that I shared today does help you if you're really wanting to get up the motivation to do things, or find out ways to sustain that motivation throughout the whole process. I hope that this was helpful. If it was, let me know. Tell me what worked for you, what didn't. If you have anything to add, reach out to me, and be sure to hit follow on this podcast so you don't miss a new episode. We're talking all things intentionality, mental health, spirituality, mindfulness, self-growth. It's a really cool place to be. I've got so many fantastic guests, more really amazing guests to come this season. So be sure that you don't miss it, and share it with a friend who you think might love to be a part of this community too. So thanks, guys. I appreciate you so much, and I'll catch you in the next one.